The rain fell in heavy sheets over Accra, drumming relentlessly on the tin roofs and splashing against the streets. Kojo Asani sat in his high-rise office, his laptop open, emails piling up, and the office lights reflecting off the wet pavement outside. He was used to long hours, the constant hum of work, and the lonely dinners he skipped at home. But tonight, the storm outside suddenly seemed louder, more urgent, as if it were warning him that something was wrong. His phone buzzed violently on the desk, startling him. The screen showed Amma's name, his 6-year-old niece. "Amma," he answered, trying to keep his voice calm. But the sound of her trembling voice cut through the storm. "Uncle, I'm alone, it's raining. I'm scared. I'm hungry." The words tumbled out in panicked gasps, and Kojo felt his chest tighten. The familiar guilt gnawed at him. He had promised Amma's late parents he would always protect her, but lately, work had swallowed most of his time. He grabbed his coat, keys, and umbrella, heart pounding as the rain plastered his hair to his forehead. The city streets were dark, slippery, and chaotic under the storm, but Kojo barely noticed. Every drop of rain mirrored the fear in his chest. He whispered to himself, "I'm coming, Amma. Hold on. I'll be there." The thought of her tiny hands trembling alone in that house pushed him forward, faster, with a determination he hadn't felt in years. Tonight, work didn't matter. Family mattered. Kojo raced through the streets of Accra, the rain lashing at his face, soaking his clothes, and making every step a struggle. The roads were flooded, and puddles hidden under the storm's shadows threatened to trip him at every turn. Cars honked angrily, swerving to avoid debris, and he had to leap aside to avoid getting hit. His heart pounded in his chest, a steady drum matching the relentless storm, each beat reminding him of Amma waiting alone in that house. As he ran, his mind flashed back to the promise he had made to Amma's parents years ago. They had hugged him tightly, tears in their eyes, whispering, "Kojo, always watch over her. She's all we have left." He had nodded, confident then, but lately work and life had made him forget the urgency of that vow. Now he could feel it in every fiber of his being. He could not fail her, not tonight. Water splashed over his shoes, seeping in, chilling his feet, and he almost slipped on a patch of oily mud. His palms gripped the steering wheel of his car tightly as he navigated through the chaotic streets, dodging fallen branches, broken signs, and scattered trash. The storm had knocked out some streetlights, leaving patches of darkness that hid sudden potholes and puddles deep enough to stall a car. Electricity flickered in nearby homes, and he worried about the dangers Amma might face if she was still at home. Thieves taking advantage of the blackout, open fires in the kitchen, or frayed electrical wires sparking in the wet air. Every second felt stretched, every street corner a potential obstacle. His wet hair clung to his forehead, rain dripping into his eyes, blurring his vision. The city seemed alive with chaos, but Kojo's focus narrowed to one thing, reaching Amma. He whispered her name under his breath, as if calling her across the storm could pull her to safety faster. Adrenaline surged, pushing him harder, faster. He could almost feel her trembling, hear her tiny voice calling for him, and it gave him strength. Minutes felt like hours, but Kojo refused to stop. He dodged one more vehicle skidding on the slick road, jumped over a puddle that threatened to soak him to the bone, and forced himself not to slip on another patch of mud. The rain pounded like a drum around him, echoing the desperation in his chest. Every splash of water, every shout from the street, every near miss reminded him why he couldn't wait. Tonight, he would get to her no matter what. Nothing, not storm, traffic, or fear, would keep him from saving his niece. Amma sat huddled on the edge of the worn sofa, the thin blanket pulled tightly around her small shoulder. The house was cold, dark, and eerily quiet, except for the occasional creak of the roof and the relentless patter of rain against the windows. The storm outside seemed to make the silence inside even heavier, and every flash of lightning made her tiny body flinch. She hugged her knees to her chest, trying to stay brave, but the hunger gnawed at her stomach, and fear crept up like shadows stretching across the room. She tiptoed to the kitchen, careful not to make a sound. The cupboards were nearly empty, just a few crumbs and a half-empty jar of peanut butter. She opened it slowly, hoping to find something to eat, but it wasn't enough. Tears threatened to spill, but she pressed her lips together, trying to be strong. In the quiet moments, her mind wandered to happier times, to the last evening her parents had cooked for her. She remembered the smell of jollof rice and fried fish, the laughter, the way her mother ruffled her hair, and how her father always made funny faces to make her eat her vegetable. A sob escaped her, and she quickly wiped it away, not wanting anyone to hear, even though she was alone. Amma's little hands trembled as she grabbed the phone from the table. She dialed her Uncle Kojo again, her fingers fumbling over the button. "Uncle, please," she whispered into the receiver, trying to keep her voice low, almost as if someone might be listening. "I'm alone. I'm hungry. I'm scared," She waited, heart hammering, listening to the dial tone, and then tried again. Each call felt like a tiny lifeline, a connection to someone who could protect her. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and the lights flickered, making the shadows dance across the walls. Amma wrapped herself tighter in the blanket and tiptoed around the house, checking the doors and windows just in case. She imagined all the scary things the storm could bring. Thieves sneaking in, fires starting from candles, or the power going out completely. Every sound made her jump, and every shadow made her tiny heart rate. Still, through the fear, there was a small spark of hope. She whispered to herself, "Uncle Kojo will come," he promised. And with that thought, she picked up the phone once more, pressing it to her ear, whispering her little prayer, hoping that soon, someone she loved would arrive to hold her, to make the storm outside seem a little less terrifying, and to chase away the loneliness that wrapped around her like the blanket she clutched so tightly. The door burst open with a loud slam, and Kojo stumbled inside, drenched from head to toe, water dripping from his hair onto the floor. The storm outside had tried to slow him down, but nothing could stop him from reaching Amma. He scanned the dimly lit room, heart hammering, until his eyes landed on the small figure huddled on the sofa. Amma's eyes widened, and then a sob broke through her fear. She leapt from the sofa and ran straight into his arms, wrapping her tiny arms around him as tightly as she could. "Uncle Kojo," she cried, her voice shaking but full of relief. Kojo held her close, feeling the wetness of her tears and the trembling in her small body. "I'm here, Amma. I'm here now," he whispered, stroking her hair, trying to steady both her and himself. "Don't ever leave me alone again," she sniffled, burying her face into his chest. Kojo's throat tightened. "I promise, Amma. I'll never let that happen again." "You're safe now," he said, his voice firm but gentle. He could feel the tension of the storm inside himself slowly easing as he held her, the panic from the drive finally melting into relief. He led her to the small kitchen and opened the nearly empty cupboard. "Let's see what we can find to eat," he said, pulling out a few snacks he had brought along. Amma's face lit up at the sight of the food, and she quickly started nibbling while Kojo poured her a warm drink. He wrapped a dry towel around her shoulders, brushing the soaked strands of hair from her face. "You'll be warm now," he said softly. Amma looked up at him, her small hands clutching the blanket around her. "Thank you, Uncle. I was so scared," she whispered. Kojo crouched down to her level, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I know, Amma. I know. But that's over now. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. You're my family, and I'll take care of you." They sat together, eating in the quiet warmth of the kitchen, the storm raging outside, but inside, there was a sense of safety, of connection, of trust rebuilt in a single embrace. Kojo could feel the weight of fear lift from both of them, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to breathe. Holding Ama close, giving her food and warmth, calming her and himself, he realized that this was more than protection, it was love. And tonight, that love was stronger than any storm. Kojo stayed in the small Kamasi house long after Amma had eaten and settled under a warm blanket. His eyes roamed the room, taking in the details he hadn't noticed in the rush of rescuing. The cupboards were nearly empty, save for a few dusty cans. The kitchen counters were sticky, and some dishes had been left unwashed for days. Bills were stacked haphazardly on the table, some already past due, and a flickering light revealed a broken lock on the front door. His stomach tightened as he realized just how long Amma had been living like this, alone, scared, and hungry. He sank into a chair, letting his gaze wander over the walls, thinking about Amma's parents. They had struggled financially before their deaths, working hard but always worried about making ends meet. Yet Kojo remembered how they had loved her fiercely, even in their exhaustion. He thought about the aunt and older cousin, who were supposed to be responsible for her now. They were supposed to care for her, but they were often absent, out with friends, running errands, or ignoring their duties entirely. The neglect wasn't just a moment of bad luck. It was constant, and Amma had been paying the price. Kojo's chest tightened with anger, a slow, burning heat spreading through him. How could anyone leave a 6-year-old alone in a storm, with empty cupboards and broken locks? The thought of Amma trembling through countless nights like this made his blood boil. Every excuse he imagined for them felt hollow and meaningless. She had been abandoned in every sense that mattered, and it could have been prevented if someone had simply cared enough to act. He rose from the chair, pacing the small room, his mind racing. "I won't let this happen again," he whispered to himself, voice low but fierce. "She will never be alone, never hungry, never scared. Not while I'm alive. I promised her parents I'd protect her, and I'm going to keep that promise, no matter what." The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, but instead of crushing him, it gave him focus, clarity. Every detail he had seen, the empty cupboards, the unpaid bills, the broken locks, was a reminder of why he couldn't wait. Kojo knelt beside Amma's bed, brushing a stray hair from her face as she slept, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. He let himself feel a surge of both love and determination. "You're safe now, Amma," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "And I swear, nothing will ever hurt you like this again." The anger in him softened slightly, replaced by a fierce, protective resolve. He would fight for her safety, for her happiness, and for the childhood she had been denied. Tonight had been just the beginning, but he knew one thing for certain. Amma would never face fear or loneliness again, not while he was there. Kojo stormed into the small office building, rain still dripping from his coat, heart racing with a mix of anger and determination. He had tracked down Abina Osei, Amma's aunt, at her workplace, and now he was standing in front of her, every step echoing his frustration. Abina looked up from her desk, startled, her eyes widening as she saw the wet, determined figure before. "Abina," Kojo said, his voice sharp but controlled. "We need to talk. Now." She tried to offer a nervous smile, but it faltered under the intensity of his gaze. "Kojo, I don't want excuses," he interrupted, taking a step closer. "Amma was alone, hungry, scared, during a storm. She's 6 years old, Abina. A child should never have to go through that, especially under your care." His voice shook with controlled anger, each word cutting through the air like lightning. Abina fidgeted in her chair, glancing away. I've been stressed, Kojo. Finances, work. It's been hard. I didn't think." "You didn't think?" Kojo repeated, his voice rising. "A child is not something you don't think about. This isn't about your stress or your money problem. This is about Amma. She's your responsibility, and you failed her." His eyes bore into hers, unrelenting, his fists clenched at his sides. Abina's lips trembled as she tried to explain. I thought she'd be fine for a few hours. I didn't expect the storm." Kojo's jaw tightened. "You didn't expect a storm? Do you have any idea what could have happened? She could have been hurt, robbed, or worse. You left her alone when she needed care, protection, love, things you were supposed to provide. And you didn't." Abina swallowed hard, her eyes filling with guilt, but she still tried to defend herself. "I didn't mean to." Kojo shook his head, cutting her off. "Meaning doesn't matter. Actions matter. And your actions put her in danger. I am not going to let this go. If you don't start taking responsibility, I will take legal action. Custody, protection, whatever it takes to make sure she is safe. Do you understand me?" She nodded quickly, unable to meet his eyes. Yes, Kojo. I understand." Kojo took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The storm of anger inside him began to calm, replaced by a sharp focus. "Good. Amma deserves better. And if you can't give it to her, I will. I promise you that." He turned and walked toward the door, leaving Abina sitting in stunned silence. The rain outside had slowed slightly, but inside him, the storm was only beginning to settle. He knew the fight wasn't over, but one thing was clear. Amma's safety and happiness were non-negotiable, and he would stop at nothing to protect her. Kojo sat across from Nana Yaboa, one of Accra's most respected family lawyers, in her neatly organized office. Rain still drizzled outside the window, but inside, Kojo's mind was racing. He had Amma safe now, but he couldn't leave her in a home where neglect was the norm. "I need to make sure she's protected," he said firmly, his eyes locked on Nana. Nana nodded, pulling out a stack of papers. "We can move quickly, Kojo. Ghanaian law allows for emergency guardianship when a child's safety is at risk. We can petition the court for temporary custody while we review the longer-term arrangement. With the evidence you have, the neglected home, unpaid bills, broken locks, it will be hard for the aunt to argue that Amma is safe." Kojo leaned forward, absorbing every word. "I don't want to drag this out. She can't wait weeks in fear or hunger. Can this happen immediately?" "Yes," Nana replied. "The court can issue an interim protection order, which gives you legal authority over her care until the matter is fully resolved. Schools, medical care, even living arrangements. You will have full rights during this period. We just need solid documentation, your statements, and proof of the neglect." Kojo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, Abina. He hesitated, then answered. "Kojo, this is ridiculous. You think you can just take Amma away from me? You'll regret this," she hissed. Kojo took a deep breath, his fingers tightening around the phone. "Amma's safety comes first, Abina. I'm giving you every chance to cooperate. But if you threaten her or refuse to follow the law, there will be consequences. I will not back down." There was silence on the line, then a cold click. He hung up, eyes returning to Nana. "She's angry," he said quietly, "but she can't stop the law." Nana gave a reassuring nod. "That's right. The law is on your side. And with the evidence, the judge will see the risks Amma faces. You're acting in her best interest, and that's all that matters." Kojo exhaled slowly, feeling a weight lift slightly off his shoulders. "I just want her safe, fed, and happy. That's all I care about. We'll handle it step by step, Nana said. First, we file the emergency guardianship. Then we document everything, school records, medical reports, proof of neglect. By the time this reaches court, you will have a strong case, and Amma will be protected permanently if needed. Kojo nodded, feeling a rare sense of clarity. He had spent years being busy with work, but nothing mattered more than this moment, this mission. For the first time, he felt fully in control, knowing he had a plan and the law on his side. He looked out the window at the rain, thinking of Amma, snug and safe at home. The storm outside had passed, but he knew battles still lay ahead. Yet he felt ready. With Nana guiding him, with the law behind him, and with unwavering determination, Amma would never face neglect again. Not now, not ever. Kojo guided Amma into his apartment in Accra, the warm air a sharp contrast to the cold, damp house she had left behind. She clutched her blanket, still small and wary, but the promise of safety in her uncle's arms made her shoulders relax slightly. Kojo set her down gently and handed her a fresh set of clothes. Here, Amma. Dry, clean, and warm. You deserve to be comfortable, he said with a soft smile. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, and for the first time in days, a small smile tugged at her lips. The first few days were slow and careful. Kojo helped her settle into her new routine. Warm meals 3 times a day, school supplies ready for the next morning, and a quiet space where she could play without fear. He watched her explore his apartment, her tiny fingers brushing over familiar objects while she let out small giggles that sounded like music to his ear. She was beginning to trust again, beginning to feel safe. Amma's laughter became more frequent with each passing day. She painted colorful pictures at the kitchen table, played with toys she hadn't seen in months, and even told him stories about her favorite imaginary adventures. Kojo would listen, genuinely interested, asking questions and laughing with her. Each moment was a step toward healing, and he soaked it in, feeling both pride and relief. At night, after tucking her into her bed, Kojo would sit quietly in the living room, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. He reflected on the promise he had made to Amma's parents years ago, and now he understood its weight fully. Protecting her was more than keeping her safe. It was about giving her the childhood she deserved, about showing love and care in every small act. He felt a deep sense of responsibility, yes, but also a new kind of fulfillment, a connection that work could never give him. He watched her sleep one evening, the soft rise and fall of her chest a steady rhythm that calmed his mind. The fear and sadness that had once clouded her eyes were slowly being replaced with curiosity, joy, and trust. Kojo realized that family was not just about blood. It was about being there when it mattered most, about being a steady presence in a world that could sometimes be frightening and unpredictable. For the first time in a long time, Amma went to bed without fear, and Kojo allowed himself to breathe fully, knowing he had made a difference. The storm, both literal and metaphorical, was behind them, replaced by warmth, laughter, and hope. He smiled softly, thinking, this is just the beginning. She will grow, she will thrive, and I will be here, every step of the way. Kojo gathered the extended family in his living room in Accra, the air heavy with tension. Relatives filled the space, some curious, some uneasy, and others openly defensive. Amma sat quietly beside him, clutching her blanket, her small presence a reminder of why this meeting mattered. Kojo's gaze swept across the room, taking in familiar faces and the uneasy shuffling of feet. He began firmly, we are here because Amma has been neglected. She is 6 years old, and for too long, she has been left alone, hungry, and scared. This is not acceptable. Family is supposed to protect each other, not abandon each other. His voice was calm but carried an unshakable authority that made some relatives look down, ashamed, while others stiffened, resisting the confrontation. Kojo continued, detailing what he had discovered, the empty cupboards, the unpaid bills, the broken locks. These are not small mistakes, he said. These are signs of neglect. Amma's safety and well-being were ignored, and it could have ended badly. I cannot allow that to happen again. He let his words hang in the air, giving each relative a moment to feel the weight of the truth. Some family members shifted uncomfortably, guilt written across their faces. Aunties whispered apologies, unsteady and remorseful. We didn't realize how bad it was, one of them admitted, eyes downcast. Kojo nodded, acknowledging the apology, but he didn't soften. Intentions are not enough, he said. Amma needs action, not excuses. If you are part of her family, you will step up and help care for her properly. Others resisted, crossing arms, murmuring about responsibilities and cultural expectations. She is not our responsibility, one relative muttered, voice shaking. Kojo's gaze snapped to them, unwavering. She is family, he said firmly. Family means protecting each other. Amma deserves love, safety, and stability. If you cannot provide that, you will step aside and let those who will take responsibility do so. No more neglect, no more excuses. The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Kojo looked down at Amma, who was quietly watching him, her small eyes wide but trusting. That trust fueled him, strengthened his resolve. "This is about honor," he said. "Family honor. How we treat the youngest and most vulnerable among us says more about us than anything else. I will not compromise on this. Amma will be safe, and she will be loved." By the end of the meeting, there was a shift. Some relatives committed to being present, to helping with school, meals, and her daily life. Others remained resistant, but Kojo's authority was clear. They could not ignore his stance or Amma's needs. As he closed the meeting, he felt a sense of relief and purpose. The family had been called to account, and he had made it clear that neglect would no longer be tolerated. Looking at Amma, he whispered softly, "You are safe now, and everyone will know it." Her small smile was the reward he had been fighting for, the proof that taking a stand for family was always worth it. Amma's laughter echoed through Kojo's home in Accra, a sound that had been missing for far too long. She thrived under his care, attending school regularly, joining dance classes, and exploring new hobbies she had never been able to before. Her days were filled with learning, play, and warmth, and the fear that had once clouded her eyes was gone. Kojo watched her with pride, helping with homework, attending school events, and celebrating every small achievement. The stability of her new life allowed Amma to grow in ways that had been impossible. She made friends, discovered new interests, and slowly began to heal from the neglect she had suffered. Every night, when she went to bed with a smile, Kojo felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He realized that protecting her had become more than a promise. It was a responsibility he embraced fully, with love, patience, and devotion. Kojo's commitment didn't stop at Amma. Inspired by her resilience and the injustices he had witnessed, he became a figure in the community for children who were left vulnerable, orphans, neglected kids, and those whose families could not protect them. He organized support, ensured they had food, schooling, and safe spaces, and advocated for their welfare. His actions showed that family was not just about blood. It was about standing up for the most vulnerable. One quiet evening, watching Amma play in the garden, Kojo reflected, "Family is more than blood. It's the love, care, and protection you give when no one else will." That thought became his guiding principle, his legacy. He had saved his niece, healed her fear, and created a ripple of hope and protection for many more. In the end, Amma's bright smile and the safety of children like her were proof that courage, responsibility, and love could change lives and leave a lasting mark on the world.